Hello, hello, Revant.
Hi, Pratik. It's been a long time since we did something like this.
Yes,
I lockdown took a opening of the unlockdown took a toll on us. I think. I
indeed,
think
and that has given
it's only
rise
been
to
rewarding because we both of us got to see lots of places as
yes, yes. I mean,
to each other.
being the people we are, we just can't stay home. I guess
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's very it's just it's too much to
our
resist.
feet
Yeah,
get itchy very soon to travel.
yeah, right. And I think this is I think ideally this was what we wanted to do in this in our discussions, because so far we've been talking about books and or like retrospective kind of recollections of travels, but I think today what we're doing is discussing some recent places that we visited, so that our memories are very fresh with the experiences of those journeys, and it's going to be a friendly sharing of our experience. And I think both the places are not too very far, given the kinds of distances that given the dimensions of this vast land of ours. So so both of us can very easily visit the places that we're going to share. Like it's like that. Like you can, it's for the place that Pratik is going to share. I can is very easily visit, and so it's that kind of a travel planning itinerary of some sort as well. I think you go first, Pratik. What are you going to talk about today?
So recently, three friends of mine and I, we visited. We actually planned to visit some other temples. We wanted to go to Senji near Arcot, near Viluppuram route, which is around 3.5 hours drive from Madras. And we wanted to go to Senji, and then we wanted to go to Perumukkal. That's another Chola period temple that we wanted to go to. This was our planned intended itinerary. But as we moved, as we started driving, we left early in the morning. We started driving, and then Google Maps, what is there nearby and all of that. We were actually searching for hotels or something like that, where we can have our lunch and things like that. But then what happened was we discovered that there is this group of villages, 3-4 villages, which are Brahmadeyas by the Cholas, and every village has Chola period temples: Ennairam, Yashalam, Brahmadeyam, Dadapuram. And all this was a cluster which was en route our this thing. So we were like, okay, why not go there? And then we were like, go there also. I mean, that was a huge leap that we wanted to take. But then like, okay, let's go. Chalo, chalo. Then en route we saw another board which said Mail Sittamur 2 kilometers, which is actually a Jain temple. It's an old Jain temple. That was again not in our plan at all. The person, my friend who was driving, he went past that board. Then he asked, "Hey, do you want to go to Mail Sittamur? It's just 2 kilometers." The board says. We were like, "Okay, fine, let's go." And then we took a U-turn again. Revant, you're on mute.
Yeah. Had you heard of this place before?
Yeah, we've heard of the place. So we knew when we saw the board to the village, when we read the village name, we could recognize that yes, there is a Jain temple there that we can visit. And it was
Yeah.
Margari, Thai, just this thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was very pleasant. I mean, Tamil
Right.
Nadu does not have a cold weather. It was pleasant, and so that was an added
Less
advantage.
hot weather.
Yeah, pleasantly hot, let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So that was another incentive to go during this time, and that was
Yeah.
nice. And then the first temple we visited was Rajarajeshwara in Rajasimheshwaram, in Talagirishwara. It is
Mm,
Talagiri
mm,
is a
mm,
place, Panamalai. So
mm.
that's a beautiful temple, and it is atop a hill. So we had the best views of landscapes, and things like that. So I just scroll through what we saw. So
Right.
this is all from the Jinalaya. Yeah, this is the Jain temple that I was talking about. This is the village of Mail Sittamur. This is a Jain mutt that was there. After that, we went here. This is the Panamalai Talagirishwara temple that I'm talking about. This
Right.
was the landscape. It was all green everywhere. We had to climb this thing, hillock, and the view from
Right.
top was rewarding. Such a huge lake to the other side, to this side, this kind of a view with farming and things like that. And yeah, and on top there is this Pallava period temple, Rajasimha temple. and
Mm-hmm.
inside which,
Wow.
yeah, this was the view from top. People doing farming and things like that. It was so beautiful, and yeah. And what was the most rewarding part of it all was actually a painting. Yeah, a painting of Parvati, yeah, this one,
Hmm.
Pallava period fresco.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's I mean, it's not a, it might sound artificial, guys, my wow, but it was just the most however.
yeah. So we were like startled when we saw her.
Yeah,
So
it's enthralling, yeah.
yeah, she was the highlight of the whole trip. But in order to
Yeah,
see
yeah,
her,
I can imagine.
yeah, we climbed up. The person of who was in charge of the temple was not there. I climbed down
Yeah,
again. Then I searched for that
yeah.
fellow. He was again not there. Then I went up again. Then we all came
Hmm.
down. Then took the car, went to the nearby village, called that fellow. Again climbed up. So the three-time climb to the hill was also worth it because we could see her. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I think that one of the best uh, pleasures of traveling is discovering something that you had not anticipated at all. Like
exactly.
that and it happens only when you do this kind of sort of unplanned travels, because if it's too planned and you have a very tight itinerary when it's too predictable, then there is no space actually for discovery. It's only when you just let loose
Let
completely
go.
that
Yeah,
you find these
exactly.
things.
Exactly. The next we went was Mandagapatte, which was
Yeah.
Mahendra's first cave, which is very, very
Yeah,
famous.
yeah, I have heard of this. Yes, yes.
Yes. So this was his inscription. I have Yetadanishtakam and Aloham Adruvam and all of that. And yeah, we went. This is Mandagapatte. Then this is the temple
Hmm.
that I will be speaking about. So
Ah,
we'll
okay, awesome, awesome.
we'll go into detail of this, but you introduce your travel first.
Yeah. So mine was, it's a very different kind of it's in a very different kind of a context. So I was born in okay, this is going to be a bit of a biography right now, but so I live in Hyderabad, but I was born in a place called Jammanvadugu, which is a town in Kadapa district. Kadapa is like an arid region. It's in an arid landscape called Rayalaseema. So Jammu is that, it's like a heart of Rayalaseema. It's almost in the center, and there you it's you when you look at photographs, you can identify that there is very little water in these areas, and it's just filled with these boulders. And behind these boulders, you find mandapas, you'll find temples here and there. It's just like it's very similar to, in fact, Hampi, Hospet, that area, because Hospet, in fact, was part of Rayalaseema between 53 and 56. So so I went there because that's where I was born. And one of my friends, Vamsi, so he's also a traveler, and he was also born in the same town. That's how, in fact, we know each other.
Wow.
And so my family left. So the thing is, I put up this very nostalgic Instagram post, which I'm glad, which I'm glad got many likes and stuff. But it's so my family, like, we are not like land owning or anything. So we a place, we generally don't go back. So we don't have anybody, we don't have any house there, we don't have any relatives in that place, but we have family friends. So I didn't have any place to stay. So I stayed in Vamsi's house itself, and we would so every day we would choose some prominent places. So we were not discovering new places; they were all places the people in the local areas knew, but was still but because of the very poor sort of infrastructure when it comes to tourism that Andhra Pradesh governments have consistently offered, these are not very well known outside that area. So we have so over that one, actually I think 10 more than 10 days, 10 12 days or so, we visited right outside Jammu. There's a place called Gandikota, which has become very popular these days, called with the nickname Grand Canyon of India. But Vamsi and I call Grand Canyon the Gandikota of Arizona. So
Wow. Wow.
it's very strong chauvinism there. But is that we also visited Tadipatri, a very prominent Vijayanagara era temple, and then Yaganti. When we went to Kadapa town itself, and Ahobilam, which is a very important Vaishnava shrine in Andhra Pradesh. You also visited, you said once. Then, so we went to all and it's very close. In fact, Ahobilam is only, I think, 80 kilometers from Jammu. So it's that area. And outside of Kadapa, there is this town. So outside of between in the road between Kadapa and Jamalamadugu, there is the town. We also went to Vantipetta, which is another Rama temple.
Kodan Rama temple, no?
Yeah, to the south of Kadapa. To the north, you have this place called Pushpagiri that we visited. So Pushpagiri is, I think, again, it's one of those sort of hidden gems, which is not a hidden gem in the sense, not in the kind of hidden gem that Pratik was talking about, which is completely unknown. I mean, I think those are completely sort of forgotten. Probably people probably know of those things, but these are in the area they're quite well known. In fact, there's so much mythology around those areas that people often make pilgrimage to those places, and it gets blurred. Like, so one of those places where you know, pilgrimage has not reduced its historical value. I think that's one major concern in lots of temple sites, that once a place becomes a pilgrimage site, it's painted over, the walls are changed, renovated so frequently, then it's no longer historical. I mean, still it's heritage, but it's not historical in the sort of very strict sense that we are looking at it, right? So it's that so this is a place where in fact, when we went there, one of the guards said, please don't post these photographs online. And I'm doing exactly the opposite. In fact, I'm just publicizing it on YouTube itself, but because that will invite too many people and they'll start vandalizing this place. That's a sentiment right now in this Pushpagiri. Yeah, it was a Sunday or Monday morning, and the journey was a very cloudy day. But as I said, it's in this part of of the state, you either find extremely arid places with just boulders here and there, or it's very forested area. You rarely stumble upon fertile sort of pastures or fertile land and or with crops abundant. None of that happens. So it's that kind of an area, and I think the sort of the lifeline is Penna River, and it's almost considered like a goddess in especially Kadapa district and Nellore district, which flows into eventually. And this Pushpagiri, in fact, is on the banks of Penna, and it's a very humble kind of a village, and it has multiple temples, but I think but people rarely visit most of these temples. So you wouldn't know that these temples are in this area or anything like that. Except there are few, actually on the way there were a few fields here and there, but besides that it's pretty hidden. I mean, it is sort of concealed from time, and that's where we went to find. And the thing is, we didn't know about Pushpagiri until the day before. I mean, some people kept up advertising it, but then we weren't sure. I mean, we looked at the photographs, and they, it's easy to laze also at sometimes, especially after walking up Ahobilam one whole day. So it's in that kind of place. But then finally one day when it looked like it was worth going, and it's a very, very rewarding experience. It's one of those places that really, really needs to be advertised, and people need badly to visit. So yeah, I think you could speak about the town, this specific town the temples that you were talking about.
So currently, it's not a town. It's not even a town. It is all the places that are there. The 3-4 villages that I mentioned are all proper villages. They're not even towns. So that's how they are. So when we went first, there are 2 temples in the town that I'm talking about. The village is today called Brahmadesam. We find many Brahmadesams in Tamil Nadu. You have one Brahmadesam near Kanchipuram, Cheyyar region. One Brahmadesam is in this Arcot, Viluppuram side. One more Brahmadesam we have in Pandidesha. So ultimately, if you say Brahmadesam, people will ask which Brahmadesam. So that's how it is. But historically, if we see, whichever village was given to the Brahmins were called Brahmadeya, and that Ya becomes Sa, and therefore today all these villages that were given as Brahmadeyas are called Brahmadesams in Tamil Nadu. And incidentally, this Pandidesha Brahmadesham was the subject of a very eerie TV series on some Bhairava, Kala Bhairava, and black magic and things like that. I grew up watching that on TV, so that is something, that's some nostalgia from my side. So yeah, this Brahmadesham is a very, very humble village. And when we went, both the temples, there are two temples. One is called Patalishwara, one more is called Brahmapurishwara. Both of these temples are Chola temples. And both were actually locked when we went. In the sense, I don't know if pujas are happening, but they were left just like that. One of the Brahmapurishwara was recently reconstructed by ASI because it was very dilapidated. Padalishwara is a very beautiful temple. I'll be sharing pictures, and both of these were locked. So we asked, some kids were playing there, and we asked the kids whether it will be open. They said no. Then there was another lady who was there on the, just on the hut that was opposite to the temple. We asked her. She sent word to the person who has the keys, and since it was close to Pongal, they were all busy in harvest in their fields. As I said, these are all fertile lands. You have so many crops. That's the opposite of your region. And so they were there. And but this cute kid, this girl kid who was the granddaughter of the person who had the keys, we told her that we need to visit the temple. She went and called her elder brother, and that boy came, and we asked him. He said, "I will go bring grandfather," and he goes in a cycle and he brings his grandfather. So that's how we entered the temple. Meanwhile, we thought before he comes, we'll finish up our lunch, which we had packed and gone. The village is just, it's a pandemic time. They didn't bother. They said, no, you are coming from Chennai. It's a long way. You won't have any place to even use a restroom or anything. Please use our restroom, they said. And they even said you have to sit here and only eat in the village, the house, this thing. And after we ate, we asked for some water and cloth and all of that. She insisted that she cleans it up, and she doesn't leave it to us because we are guests to the village and all of that. It was the sweetest experience. It was so filled with warmth. Yeah, it was really nice. So that's about the village.
So the village, Pushpagiri has, so you said Brahmadesham has 2 temples. So Pushpagiri has 20 temples, I think.
Wow.
But so thing is, we didn't. So I think I need to go there once again because I only visited 2 of these complexes.
Okay.
So as I said, I didn't know which temple we were going to visit, the names of these temples, and Google Maps. The thing is, like while driving, we also realized that Google Maps does not know the width of India's roads. So like it says something is a road, but it actually is not. So you can often miss it, right? Like because it's not even a road; it's just like a patch of, like, there's big grass and there's one patch without grass, and that's the road. That's what it's reading as the road there. So we got lost on the way and all of that stuff. And so it marked the wrong temple. So there are 20 of these temples, small temples, and the 3 I think main are Trikuteshwara temple, Vaidyanatheshwara temple. There's a Kamakshi temple as well. There's an Indranatheshwara. So all of these are Shiva Shakti shrines, and the main one is Channakeshwara, which is the one we visited. And so actually first we went to Indranatheshwara. We didn't know. I mean, we just went there, and it was a very, very small temple. I think it must have belonged. It's actually very akin to the one you showed from Rajasimapuram. It's the motifs almost identical, and even the pillars, they are very, very rudimentary, the sculptures. So it's a very, very small temple that almost nobody visits, but somebody is on right opposite the bank, right on the other side of the bank to Anjanatheshwara is Channakeshwara. So people have somehow marked this as Channakeshwara. That's people often happen, and lots of people get lost because of that process. And finally we went to Channakeshwara, and the view I saw that I beheld was completely took me by total surprise. Like I hadn't expected this place, which is not that far from my hometown, to has such a spectacular view. One second, I just screen it to you. It's like this. Is it visible?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So that is Pushpagiri's Channakeshwara temple, which is the one I'm going to speak about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'll start talking about the temple, and then you can start talking about your temple as well, right? So I'll be talking about this complex only. The other temples okay. Let me talk a little more about Pushpagiri's history. So Pushpagiri is one of the, I think, very, very important sites in Kadapa district. So there's a temple. I mean, I'll give the references. I think we'll give it on YouTube, in the description for people to read, because you get the complete floor, floor plan, objective description of the sculpture in that book. It's a phenomenal book for all temples in Kadapa I discovered after I returned from the trip. So Pushpagiri is named, Pushpagiri. It's a flower hill. The name, it gets its name because of, there are two legends that explain its name. One is that apparently there was once a man, an old Brahmin, who took his father's ashes to the river, Penna River, to immerse them, but then they became a flower, the ashes. And then the site of those flowers, Pushpagiri was born.
Mhm.
The other story is that there was a man who was supposed to feed, feed bulls, I think. So he took to wash and get them water. He took the bulls to the water. Then the bulls became young. He also became young. Now this man came to his wife, and then the wife would not recognize him because she looked like a different person. Then he took her as well. Then she became young. Then they couldn't believe this, and then the gods saw this, and then they realized that it was a spot in Brahma's creation. Like, it was just as the gods are immortal. There was this one spot in his creation which still retained that quality of godliness. So then apparently Garuda comes and drops a flower to cover it because it's unearthly, that region, that spot,
Okay.
and that flower becomes Pushpagiri.
Okay.
That's the two stories that's told about Pushpagiri. And Pushpagiri, in fact, the Kamakshi temple of Pushpagiri, sorry, the Vaidyanath temple has the Kamakshi Peetam as well, Kanchi Kamakoti Peetam. So that that's what connects it to the rest of the, let's say, pilgrimage scheme of India. It's part of the grid that way. And the other thing is, eventually, I think the 12th century, in the, let's say, the heyday of the Cholas, it was integrated much better with all other pilgrimage sites. So eventually it came to be called the Madhya Sri Shaila, as well as Madhya Tirupati, Madhya Tirumala. So it's like, they are considered, like, in the scheme of Sri Sailam, there are considered 8 temples are said to be part of Sri Sailam's orbit. The southernmost is like the end of Sri Sailam's orbit. Similarly, for Tirupatis, this is like the northernmost limit of Tirupati's orbit. So
Right.
Channakeshwar temple is that. Vaidyanatha is the same for Sri Sailam. So that is the role of, let's say, that's how Pushpagiri is connected to other places. Probably in its inception, it must have been any other temple site, but obviously because it became a prominent site, people started making mythological associations with other temples of surrounding regions, and that's where that's the, let's say, legendary element of Pushpagiri. But Pushpagiri, and so thing is, the Telugu speaking regions, right, especially Telangana and Rayalaseema, are what we might call frontier regions. So the north of Krishna River, like north of Tungabhadra, more to the part in the Malaprabha, Ghataprabha, which form Krishna River, tributaries of Krishna. That is, let's say, a core region. So there are so many kingdoms that arose in that region, right? There are all of the Badami Chalukyas, Rashtrakutas, Kalyani Chalukyas. Later, even in a way, I think even Vijayanagara Empire, it's not to the south really, and so all of these kingdoms are Kadambas before that, much before that, Vakatakas. So all of these are of that heart. Likewise, let's say, in the Tondai Mandalam is, let's say, another heartland. And now what is between these are all frontier regions. So there are no great empires that rose around in these regions, right? There's no, like, until I think the Hoysalas are probably the first major independent kingdom that rose in southern Karnataka region, even though that's such a fertile area. Similarly with Rayalaseema. So Rayalaseema is also a frontier region. So all of the kingdoms that dominated the Deccan through the centuries have had some role to play in the sort of infrastructure of this area. So the Badami Chalukyas, this is part of Badami Chalukya territory. It became part of the Kalyana, of Kalyana's territory of the Chalukyas of Kalyana, and then Gangas, right, of Talakad had some role to play. And then there are, let's say, tributary dynasties of the Cholas, like Renadu Cholas, also called Telugu Cholas. who ruled. So Reynadu, this is actually Chammanamadugu is like the heart of Reynadu. Reynadu is like the heart, like main, like Rayalaseema. The term Rayalaseema was initially used for Reynadu alone, which is the part, which is like it's at the crossroads of three districts: Anantapur, Kurnool, and Kadapa. So that is Reynadu. So this is Reynadu Cholas are another people dynasty that ruled. And then eventually, finally, I mean, of course, Vijayanagara. And Vijayanagara, it's much more, let's say, it's a much more Rayalaseema. That's why, in fact, it's called Rayalaseema because Rayas, right? The Vijayanagara Raya. And so that's the history. But there is one dynasty, the Vaidumbas. I didn't actually know of them at all until I started reading about this. Are let's say sort of feudatory kingdom, just like the Gangas, like just like the Gangas and Nolambas, who are mostly they were feudatories to other kings much of their reign. So the Vaidumbas ruled from exactly Gandikota to apparently Kolar. That's like proper. That's exactly Rayalaseema area. So that is like so everybody probably has some role to play in this temple as well, because this is probably the primary shrine in Kadapa. And so that is, let's say, the history of Pushpagiri. I think one of the last temples to be constructed, in fact, is this Channakeshava temple. If all the others, the Shiva temples, is a primarily a Shaiva Kshetra, Pushpagiri. And this place comes to fruition only in the during the reign of the Vijayanagara kings. And I think it's, in a way, I think it even shows in the let's say the Gopuram and so on. And but as you will see, it's such a phenomenal syncretic kind of temple shrine that it's like every part seems to come have an inspiration from different places. That is the that's the, I think you must already, I mean, you are expert in these kind of things, so you might already be able to see some of that, what I'm talking about. Yeah, I think, yeah, you could do likewise now.
Sure. So Brahmadeyam, Brahmadesham, however you want to call it.
Yeah, so I think you can start talking about the temple itself now.
Yeah.
When you, because you've already spoken a little about the history.
This is the Patalishwara temple that I'll be speaking about. Like you said, we don't have any legendary stories that are associated. I mean, we don't get to know of them because these were almost dilapidated and left without worship. Nothing is there. So those legendary stories are something that we don't hear today. Probably some mythology was connected, as it is usually done. Today we don't get to see them. So this is the outer view, the complex that is there of the first temple called Patalishwara. So this whole village cluster of Yashalam, Yannayiram, Brahmadesam, Dadapuram, and a few villages there are together called as Rajaraja Chaturvedi Mangalam. So they were given as Brahmadeyas in the name of Rajaraja Chola. And the earliest inscriptions we get from this area are Rajendras. During Rajendra the First's time. And this village, Brahmadeya, was the heart of the whole Chaturvedi Mangalam. And all the inscriptions, so the village is also called as Taniyur. So in the sense, though it was under the administration of the Cholas, the administration of the village itself was taken care by the local body to whom the village was donated. So therefore, it was called Taniyur, separate village, literally translating to separate village. And if we look at the chronology of, the area as such as, so obviously the Pallavas were here. Very near to this village is the Rajasimheshwara temple that I spoke about, and the Mandakapattu caves and the Dalavanur caves, all of which are Mahendra period caves. So Pallavas, this formed the heartland of Pallavas. Pallavas had their architectural, advancements here. Then, of course, the Cholas. These are standing examples of Chola, temples. And after them, we do see in the other temple, which I will be showing, Brahmapurishwara, we have later Pandya period inscriptions. So it is very clear that Pandyas also came to this territory after the Cholas. After which we have Vijayanagara inscriptions. We have from Saluva Narasimha and other Bukkaraya, and some inscriptions of Vijayanagaras are also found here. So it is Pallava, Chola, later Pandya, Vijayanagara. So that is the chronology of these temples. But fortunately, both the temples that we are speaking about do not have any Vijayanagara additions. usually when we see a temple, the core might be Chola. We will have so much Vijayanagara addition that the Chola element itself is, not to be seen.
Yeah. Especially in the peripheral regions, especially in the, I don't know about Tamil region, but I mean, almost all, let's say in Andhra and Karnataka, it's all, you don't find a Chola element at all. It's almost completely gone.
Correct. Here, just in the Garbhagriha, we will find all other places there will be Vijayanagara additions. Even the Rajasimheshwara temple is a Pallava period with the Nayaka period addition. So the beauty is reduced by those, pillars that are put in front. Sorry to use that expression, but it is that way. So, but then what is fortunate about this is it is a pure Chola structure standing without any addition in terms of structure. That is. So this is Patalishwara. And this is when we enter, and what we see is, the Garbhagriha is here, which has a round, round shikhara, the Vaishara shikhara or Vrittakara shikhara. With 4 sides, you have these niches that are there. And wherever the niche is, here in the Bhitti region, in the wall portion, you have a projection that comes out based on where this cardinal direction is, or the koshta is. So that's one thing. It has a long vestibule, or the antarala, and the antarala has a beautiful jalaka kudya, or a window. And then you have another mukhamandapa here, which can be reached by 2 flights of steps to the sideways. And you have one mantapa, or a mukhamandapa, that is here, which is reachable by 2 stairs from these 2 sides. What is very, very interesting apart from this is there is actually a huge, just a platform. We don't get the superstructure today, but there's a big platform that is there in front of the whole temple structure. So S.R. Balasubramaniam, in his seminal work of Chola temples, he speculates that it is probably a matha that was functioning inside the temple complex. And this could have been a big room where the inhabitants of the matha were staying. So it is a hypothesis put forth, but of course we don't have any concrete evidences to.
So he has written about this book. Yeah, he has written about this temple.
Yes, he has written about this temple. Yes, we have that. So now, as we near, we can see that there is an Upapitha, or the base platform, on which there is a Jagati, and then a Vritta Kumuda, a round Kumuda, and then a Kantha, and then the Kampa, another Gala with Galapadas, another Kampa, and then you have the Bhitti. Bhitti usually has 8-sided Vishnukanta Kudya pillars, and then you have the Padmadalakriti mandis with lotus-like motifs, and then you have the Potikas, and then the Kapota, and then the Shikhara. So that is the basic structure of the temple. And it is Mishraka Madhyama, so it is a mixed medium. So till the Prastara, it is stone, and on top it is brick. And Chola
similar thing is followed in this also.
So Chola brick structures are a rarity to find. So that is one thing. This probably is the Devi shrine. But there is no deity there today. One thing I wanted to also show was, so what we see prominently is, this is, we see lotuses. So when the Upapitha is starting also, you have lotus motifs here. Upapitha is ending, again here you have lotus. And then the Jagati is ending there. In between the two, you have lotus here. When the Kumuda is starting, underneath the Kumuda, you have lotuses. On top of the Kumuda, again, you have lotuses. So every fillet of the Adhisthana, of the base, is decorated with lotus motifs in every place. So lotus here, 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 and here.
Is there an inscription on the?
There are lots of inscriptions that are there. So this is a Padma Kesara Adhisthana. So which is, every fillet is sandwiched between lotus motifs. So that is one thing. So because you asked about these are the Dwarapalakas that are there, typical Chola Dwarapalakas. And the Bhuta Ganas are there in the Prastara, making so many funny gestures and things like that. This is Patalishwara inside the temple. And so that is, here you can see the lotus fillets very clearly in the Adhisthana. Right? So as far as the inscriptions go, there is one belonging to Rajendra the First. That's the earliest inscription that we get. That's very interesting because one of his consorts is giving some donation, and she says, Raja Oda Bhujam Vardhika. For the betterment of the Bhuja of Rajendra, I am giving this donation. So may his power and valor grow. For that, merit, I am giving this donation. That is very, very interesting.
I love how you did this to your own
For my own
yeah.
Bhujam Vardhika, yeah.
Yeah.
She says that. That's very interesting. The shrine, the Swami himself is referred to as Tiruppatalishwara Mudaya Nayanar in this thing. And Kulothunga Cholas, again, Kulothunga 1 inscription is there. I'm not going through all the inscriptions, but generally donation after donation after donation is there. A lot of inscriptions are there. One inscription, apart from this Bhujam Vardhika, is very interesting, is from Vikrama Chola's period, where what is happening is, there's this fellow called Aragan, and he is gifting 16 cows to this temple. And he says, I am gifting this because when a friend and I went for hunting, I by mistake killed my friend, thinking, I was aiming at the animal, but I killed my friend with an arrow. So that was a genuine mistake I did, and for repenting for the sin.
Expiation.
For that, I'm giving these 16 cows to this temple. May Lord forgive me. And that was a very interesting inscription that is there in the temple. Kulothunga second period, we find a mention of Aludaya Nachiyar, who is the Devi here. But today we don't find that. And later, as I said, in 1334, we have Kampanna Udayar, Vijayanagara inscription, which talks about a remission of tax. So we see that continuously, right from Rajendra's period, this temple up to the Vijayanagaras has been in worship and in glory with royal patronage. Somehow after that, it fell into, this kind of a state. So that's about Patalishwara. If you can take on from here, then we'll do.
Yeah. So the temple, actually, the thing with Pushpagiri, especially Channakeshwar temple, is that it has a it does not have a glamorous kind of history, in that even though there are contributions made by later kings like Vijayanagara kings, but the foundation is not by any major dynasty. I think it was the inscriptions talk about, like, this is what I've read about translations of the inscriptions, based on the inscriptions. It was based on it was through the sale of the temple by priests of the other temples, was sold this land to a small community of Brahmins who got this temple built. And we can imagine that it probably had a sort of humble beginning, right? Yeah. So I think I'll start talking about the layout of this temple complex. This temple, you can see me, right?
Yeah.
Temple complex, and then I think things will. Then I can probably explain, because it was not all built at the same time. So we really do not know when the temple, what form the temple existed. In, let's say, in the first half of the millennium, first half of the millennium. It was first millennium, because I think the earliest inscription is probably from 1294, and then the next major inscription is 1299. So before that, the temple probably existed in a sort of some kind of a germ. The germination might have taken place, but it did not really have a scale of any kind, clearly, because there are no inscriptions from previous eras. And as you can see, there are 4 shrines here, right? There are 4 Vimanas. So the one in the right in the middle, the one that I'm scrolling through, that's called that's the Channakeshwar temple. Right next to that is Santana Malleshwara temple, which are both same building. They're attached to one another. They share the same Artha Mandapa as well. In fact, there is it's like 2 Garbhagrihas with a common mandapa. Okay, and then perpendicular to both of these is another temple which you cannot see here, the Vimana of which you cannot see. That's called the Uma Maheshwara temple. So clearly, this too began as a Shaiva shrine only, because just as all the other shrines of the temple. And the 1294, the earlier inscription talks about Santana Malleshwara temple, not about Channakeshwar. Channakeshwar temple is first spoken about 1299. So so there are these 3 shrines which are attached to one another, which is a common building. But when you look at the stone, when you look at the stone of the outer walls, as well as the bricks and all of that, it's clear that they're all from different periods. Not one of these is from, no two of these are from the same period. So I am guessing that I think Uma Maheshwara one is the latest, I'm thinking, based on the kind of art that was there. It's much more from it seems much more from a later time. And the other two, as you can see, this one is Lakshmi. It's right now it's a Lakshmi shrine because right next to Channakeshwar temple. While the other one that's called Sakshi Malleshwara. That's not that's another again a Shiva shrine. And opposite Channakeshwar temple, so there's a stairs leading downwards, and there you have an Anjaneya shrine. Right. Again, there's no Rama, but there's only Anjaneya there. That was very interesting. And then there is a Gopuram. So this is the overall map plan of the whole temple, and the Gopuram is from the Vijayanagara era, as I think it's quite clear from the image of the Gopuram as well. And yeah, so this is, here you can see the view of the Gopuram. So here you can see, right, like this is the hall, there's that passage, that's the hall of the shared temples. And this is a completely different building. It's not clear that they are separated, but this is a completely different separate building. And that is the Gopuram there. And this is the front of the whole thing. And yeah, this is the Gopuram. It's a very ordinary kind of very regular for us in South India. And yeah, here this is the connection between the two temples. This is to the left you have Channakeshava, and to the right you have Santana Malleshwara. And so I'll start.
Wow.
Right. So this is the base. This is the Adhisthana of the hall of the shared temples. And as you can see, there's the Adhisthana with flower flower petal pattern, above which there are elephants, and on the top of that is what I find most interesting. This is on the base. This is still a pedestal. On the pedestal, you have a little dome with Ganapati on it. And so it's not even like really. And on top of that, you have the Kumbha Panjara pattern with flower petals flowing out in the top of the Adhisthana, literally the topmost layer. And on this, you find, you have this yali with, again, flowers flowing out of it. And all of this is on the Kumbha Panjara itself, which is on the Adhisthana, which is what I found the most. You must have seen these, maybe, I don't know. But I've never seen this on the Adhisthana itself. That I think that's quite a rarity. And this is all, and there's a protrusion, right? This is, you have having a protrusion on the Adhisthana is common, but instead of making it a plain wall, they decided to carve it into bulbous patterns, which is, I think, which was sheer genius. And again, even the kind of the Kumbha Panjara, it's I don't think it fits to any single school. There is some Chola element. There's Nayaka element. There is, all of these things are just being mixed. Like it's a totally very creative kind of effort, I think, that went into making this, right? And look at this. I'm on one side of the Kumbha Panjara, there is some kind of lion popping out. On the other side, it's actually a horse jutting out, right? And this, I think that's what sort of somehow captures the whole Adhisthana. In fact, like throughout the temple, you have there's an obsession with horses, elephants, and there's another animal that they're obsessed with, which you will see as I show more of this. Right? And here is another similar kind of I don't know. Is there a term for this kind of jutting out from Adhisthana with Kumbha Panjara and so on?
Not with Kumbha. With Kumbha Panjara in the Adhisthana, I have never seen. This is new for me. But whenever it is called Nibra. Whenever there is a projection is called.
Yeah. So there is this. I mean, the projection. Obviously we see all the time, but this is, and also interesting. So there is the projection not followed throughout through the hall. It's not followed. There is no pillar flowing out of the projection. There is it's flat after on top of the Adhisthana. There's nothing. There's no. It's just the Adhisthana is having the Nibra. That's what.
That is very, very interesting.
Yeah. And look at this. On this this, this kind of dome, there are two Vanaras fighting. I think
Vali
probably
Sugriva.
Vali and Sugriva, yeah. So and again, I think that there, I think it's very close to again Vijayanagara motifs, because especially in the heartland area, they're just obsessed with Vanaras. I mean, they're doing all kinds of things, right? Vanaras, they're playing music, they're fighting, they're dancing, they're making out, they're doing all kinds of things, right? So I mean, the hall itself takes you, just looking at the Adhisthana of the hall itself takes you some 1 hour, 45 minutes. It's and as I told you, this is a hall part, and then you have the Adhisthana of the each of these three, which have completely their own. They have individual agencies. They're not going through one paradigm or anything like that. Now this is the wall of the major Channakeshava temple. So the one in the middle is Channakeshava, right? And there are these two pillars. Again, the pillars also, I mean, each of the features is discernible, right? Each of the features is discernible, but I think the way they're fit into one another, I find it quite peculiar, right? Because there's just too many layers to the pillars, and the kind of like I think there must have been so much, and as you will see eventually, each note, like no two sets of pillars is actually the same. They're all completely different. And right here you have an image of Brahma. There is a scene from the Mahabharata, and then there is again there's someone fighting the Yali right here, and here actually here below Channakeshava, you have a scene from Jataarjuniyam, right? They're fighting over the pig. And I think that is the third animal that they're so obsessed with in this temple.
Varaha.
Wherever you go, you'll find pigs. And the pigs, and they're not, and it's not connected to Kiratarjuniyam even.
Right.
Like some places it's like Varaha motif of the Vijayanagara kings. And elsewhere it's just normal life. They're just pig hunting. Elephants killing pigs. People shooting pigs from over horses. Stuff like that. Right? And I mean, to me, that those two are the most interesting facts over this temple. One is how they connect these, like they see. I think the freedom. I think the fact that it was not really patronized by one single dynasty or one single authority or establishment made the architects who were patronized to pick things from wherever they felt like. I think that's my sort of thesis for this, for the kind of authenticity of this temple. And the other thing is the pigs. There is so much to learn. Like there's a paper waiting to be written on quotidian life as revealed through the Pushpagiri Channakeshava temple.
It's very interesting.
Here's another wall, other sort of between two plinths. Again, as you could see, the two plinths are very different. The plinths here are not really the same as here. The proportions, the distances between the distances, the lengths between different portions of the plinths, right, are not the same here. It's quite different, right?
And also, I think the previous thing, the sides of the pillar had Nagavaktras. Here it is somebody, with Anjali Mudra or something, I think.
Oh, right. Yeah. There are people. There is just, yeah.
Nagavaktra here and people there. I think that all that is different. Yeah. Very interesting.
One second. And even the creeper pattern also, I think there is some difference there. And I mean, some of it is not, some of the differences also come because some are faded out and some are not faded out. I mean, that's also there. But even despite that, even in spite of that, and here this is a Kaliya Mardana scene, obviously, and and here now this pillar is completely different from all the others.
Right.
This does not have this is not octagonal. This is circular, and so this I think I saw it. I think this is called Srikhanda. I mean, in Kalyani Chalukya sort of motif is called Srikhanda pillar. I think that the Kalyani Chalukyas, that are like, it's either completely polygonal, it's full circular with really smooth sort of glittering surface. The Srikhanda pillar, it's much, you can see your face almost like a mirror. But here this I don't think this is a sand. This must be sandstone or something. So that's not there. It's much more normal. It's just a stone. But this leaf motif, it reminds me of that. But then the uh, yali with I don't know what you would call this, but
Malas.
what do you call
Mukta grasas or
it?
malas. Mukta malas or
Yeah, so
mukta
the
grasas.
malas with the Srikhanda is again, I think it's a rarity because the on the Srikhanda pillar, the pillar is so prominent that you only have sketches of all the other things. You don't have things jutting out of the. So there is no protrusion on the pillar itself. That again, I found quite rare. And right here again, there is some war. I'm not sure which one going on under the base of the pillar, and there is again there is a Kalyanam of I would guess who Shiva and Parvati with Vishnu. I think this must be, or either or maybe Sita and Rama. I'm not sure because here there is
Here there
Ramayana.
are, yeah.
So it must be that. Right. Similar pillar with Narasimha right there. I mean it's little Narasimha.
Varaha.
This is Varaha with Lakshmi.
That's a long snout.
Sorry?
That's a long snout.
So, yeah. So all of these are all Channakeshava temple. So that's, as I said, Channakeshava temple is one. The parallel one is Santana Maleshwara, which is an earlier temple. And the one perpendicular to all of these is Uma Maheshwara. So, yeah, this is Gajasamhara Murti. This is now I'm coming to now I want to show you this is Uma Maheshwara temple, which is perpendicular to both of these.
Okay.
And this here you have much more smaller. You don't have these big sculptures. The sculptures are much smaller, and then I think there are more layers. There are more layers to the pedestal, and you have more kind of. It's much more diverse. The kind of motifs that are used in this on this temple. There's Samara Murti, of course. And then again, Kalyana, Shiva's Kalyana, this is clearly because there's Vishnu here and then Shiva here. So again, there's another image of Shiva with some war sequences on both sides. Here there's Urdhva Tandav Murti, which I have not seen so many. I mean, I have not, like, it's been some time since I visited Tamil Nadu, and I'm not sure how often you find this in other places. I think Tamil Nadu is much more common, Urdhva Tandava. Yes. Not sure if it's that prominent in Karnataka, for example. So it's been some time since I saw this, and it's really exciting to see that. Yeah, and this is another wall, and now so yeah, this is another wall, and now we've come to this is a wall. This is substance from the middle one, which is Santana Maleshwara temple, and here this actually I wanted to ask you, Pratik. Do you know what scene this is? The one that I'm pointing to.
I am not sure.
So this is actually very common in many of these temples. I've seen it so many temples, but I'm not really sure.
I've seen these motifs. A huntress whose leg, the thorn is being removed from her leg.
Yeah. This. Or sometimes sometimes she's only pulling it out. It's like it's either somebody else or she's pulling it out.
Or she herself looks behind and takes the thorn outside. I've seen these motifs, but I don't know what they represent or if there is a story or it's just decorative. I don't know.
So this is actually this is what if these kind of things are what I find interesting in this temple. There are these non-Puranic, non-Brahminical kind of elements as well. And again coming back to the pillars, has the features of the first set of pillars I showed you with the the inverted petals and so on. But the base is the rest of it is again like Srikhanda pillar, right? And again look at this. All of these pillars are different. All three of these are there. None of these three are same. No two of these are same. Yeah. Now that brings me to the smaller sort of images. Here is some image of one person carrying things. I think they are objects there. I don't think they are people. So there are also these representations of different kinds of occupations in this temple.
Okay.
Which as I said, there's so much to be written about daily life through the centuries using this using the sort of model of Channakeshava. And here this is a Hoysala kind of motive. And here you can actually see that when I was talking about fading out, here there is this, I think, sugarcane kind of right, with creeper patterns. It's all faded out though. Again, I told you pig killing. One more pig killing. hunting boar. One more hunting boar scene. And another thing I found interesting in this entire trip was there are so many scenes of people killing elephants and horses. I think less so here, but in Ahobilam, I think there is once the Vijayanagar come in, there's really it's a much more cosmopolitan sort of globalized kingdom, right? So there are Portuguese, Arabs in their territory. So there are you can actually identify this person is an Arab, this person is a Portuguese, and so it's like I think there you actually find some kind of they want to portray the dominance of elephants over horses or horses over elephants. That kind of thing is going on. And here, what you find is that people killing each other's animals. Yeah, exactly this one. So here, just look at this. Just so much drama going in this one scene. There is this one person on a horse, and a person. I think that this person is on the team of the horse. He's piercing the leg of the elephant here, and there's the elephant, and there's one person. There are two people on the elephant. One person is riding the elephant. The other person is looking other side and trying to, I think, throw a lance at the person on the horse. And there is a person below the elephant trying to kill the elephant, and then the person right next to him is trying to kill the horse. And there's a person on the horse also. It's just, I mean, the endless. I mean, I think
There's so much.
It's when I see these. It's actually when I see these kind of things in Indian temples that I feel that the kind of agency that these sculptors must have had, because let's say one of the best known architectural historians in the world, in fact, is James Ferguson, who did all of these categorizations of Indian architecture as well. And they're actually amazing. He has these sketches of Mahabalipuram and all, and they're very, very beautiful. But then he was a staunch sort of Victorian, so he thought he didn't like this kind of obscene art and all of that. But besides that, he like even architecture. Their problem was that these temples are not what do you say symmetrical at all. They are like there's no order. There's like one pillar, it's of one kind, the other pillar is something else. There's no two temples can be compared. There's no order. There's no some kind of overarching vision. And I think that's the most beautiful thing, in fact, about our temples. Because imagine that the sculptor must have just been given this. Take this panel, do whatever you want. Take this stone, just do whatever you want. Because it's like, I mean, there's no way somebody sat and designed which person is going to kill which elephant, which horse, and like that. Because of 2 feet later, there's none of this happening. There's some image of Narasimha, there is completely unrelated stuff. And I think this is Krishna. Yeah. And this is finally there's this Santanamale, the Sakshi Maleshwara temple is incomplete. The only thing is you have this Dakshinamurti. This is Dakshinamurti image on one side. Yeah, that's it. I think I'm done with my. And there's actually one last thing I wanted to show about from temple. So as you can see, the kind of inspirations are it's a multitude. There's a multitude of inspirations for this Pushpagiri temple, Chandrakeshava temple, because there's Chola style, there is Nayaka influence, there is Vijayanagara influence. I mean, I wouldn't say these are because these places were controlled by the different places and there were guilds coming from all of these places. Instead, I think there must have been local people only, but they took motifs from different places, whatever suited them, right? That's the sense I am getting. And what I found most interesting, in fact, was as you can see, I think in the Rajasimhapuram image you showed me, there are the Shala and Kutas, instead of like arches, you have these Sukhanasas, right? I think it was in the Rajasimhapuram one. And that's what I find here, as you can see. Right? So when I first looked at this temple, it looked exactly like the Bhogamanandishwara temple. I mean the Vimana. It's like I think the same number of tiers, like 4 tiered, and the same type of almost kumbha. I mean they're actually different Vimanas of all of them, but same kind of kalasha, kumbha, whatever. But and the sort of proportions, the length, breadth, it's very, very similar. When I look closer, the biggest difference to me was these. Instead of arches or instead of images, instead of the Shala Kuta, instead you just have Sukhanasas on all sides.
You have the Shala and Kuta, And the kuta is decorated, and the shala and kuta
Exactly.
are all decorated with
There is a kuta, there's a shala, but instead of a gateway kind of in which you usually it's polygonal shape usually, but here you have a flower patterned kuta throughout the shala.
And in between the shala and kuta, instead of leaving it plain, they put a panjara there.
Right. Yeah.
Which is what you see. And the influence of the prastara or the top portion between the kuta, karana kuta and the shala, you have the panjara. Now, similarly, now if we look at the wall portion just below it, the two pillars are directly proportional to the karana kuta. The next set of two pillars are directly proportional to the shala. And in between them, there is a recession that goes inside, which is directly proportional to the panjara that is there. So
yeah. You mean that. So this
is corresponding
this
to the
is a shala proportional shala, and then this is the kuta, and then the panjara.
And in between you have the recession, which is akin to the panjara on top. And here the panjara in the wall also is nishkranta panjara, where there alone they have not attached it to the top portion. They have left a gap. That is nishkranta.
Right.
So, to show the difference and the symmetry to come out.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Right.
Especially that Kumbha Panjara thing that you said is very, very intriguing. I've never seen anything like that.
I think I'll show that one last time.
Yes, please do. Very beautiful.
Yeah.
That too in the Adhisthana. That is the most, as you said.
That's the most interesting. That's exactly. Like, I mean, I was not sure if I saw it, and I was pretty sure like this is very quite rare, you know.
Very rare, yeah.
So that's my 2 pens. I mean, it's more than that, but
no, very beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, you. I think you should go now, Pratik. Your second.
Brahmapuri Ishvara temple. This is Patalishvara only. I'm still in Patishvara. I've come to Brahmapuri Ishvara here. So this is the entrance gopuram that is there, incomplete gopuram again. This is the mantapa. As we go inside the first prakara, you have a mantapa like this. But we cannot do a full pradakshanam because it's dilapidated. All the stone has fallen off and things like that. Inside, this is the Shiva shrine, Brahmapuri Ishvara. This is the Devi. And the temple is just filled with inscriptions. No wall is left without writing. So many inscriptions. Everywhere you see there is Grantham or Tamil. Everywhere. Yeah. It's just filled with inscriptions. One thing is, I found S.R. Balasubramaniam, I mean, he's written just a small paragraph on the temple. He writes that Kulotunga's inscription is the earliest. But I found Rajendra's Maikirti in this as well. So, I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe he did not notice the inscription of Rajendra. So this is how we enter the temple. So first, that was the gopuram that is there. And then the first prakaram. Then this is the entrance to the second prakaram, where you have a full-on, veranda which is covered. So this is the veranda that's there. And then we climb up. So this is the Nandi Mantapa. Then inside you have the Shiva temple that is there, temple proper. So this is, as we do the pradakshanam, we can see that it is again a Mishraka Madhyama temple, mixed medium. It is brick structure on top, reworked obviously, and it is the stone structure below. It's a plain Padabandha Adhisthana. You have an Upana, Jagati, and then a Tripatta Kumuda, and then you have another Kantha, and then Kampa, Kantha, Kampa, and then you have the Bitti, the wall portion. And it follows the Panchakoshta Murti plan. So the niches have the Panchakoshtas: Ganesha, Durga, Brahma, Dakshinamurti, and Vishnu. So the 5 murtis that are there in the proper koshtas that are found here. This is the Dakshinamurti image that we see. Ganesha is dilapidated. I mean, his trunk is broken. And this is the Lingodbhava. Sorry, not Vishnu, but Lingodbhava. And then Brahma to the north and Durga. So that is Durga for you. So again, as I said, the inscriptions are, and this is how we see the temple. And here is where I found Rajendra's Maikirti there. So that's one thing. So the inscriptions in the temple is something very, very important, I feel, especially Kulothunga's inscription. And one more important architectural feature is these shrines, the niche shrines, have a Mukha Chatushki, which is perhaps a later addition. I don't know. We'll have to see that. But this 4-pillared small mantapa before the Koshtamurti, that Mukha Chatushki is found here, which is something very interesting. And on top of the Shikara, it's the same type of Shikara that we saw in Patalishwara temple also, except that some plastering has been done here. One important feature is the Maddalas that we see here. So in the Rajasthan Jharokas, we find below the window those Maddalas. This one that we can find here, the Maddalas that are there. So that's one. So as far as the inscriptions are concerned, one major inscription I would say is that of Kulothunga I. So Kulothunga I's inscription, I mean, the content of the inscription is not that important, because the purpose of the inscription, it is to donate some lambs and cows and ghee and whatever, the usual donation gift inscription. But what is very important is, it tells us that the king Kulothunga stayed at a Vishnu temple called Rajaraja Vinnagara Talvar, and he says that Rajaraja Vinnagara Talvar, Vinnagaram is Vishnu Griham in Tamil. So he says that the Rajaraja Vishnu Griham, the deity of Vishnu of Rajaraja Vishnu Griham, is the tutelary deity or protective deity of Kulothunga. And he was there in that temple along with his subordinate, who is called Adavallan, alias Kulothunga Chola Muvenda Vedalan. So the king is inside the Vishnu temple along with his parikaras, and from there he is issuing a royal decree for the donation to the Shiva temple. Okay. Now, this much detail may not sound relevant, but the thing is, the Vaishnava hagiographic sources, the Sri Vaishnava hagiographic sources keep claiming that Kulothunga the first was the tyrant who was, anti-Vaishnavism, who was this Shaiva fanatic and all of that. But you see this inscription, it clearly says he was in a Vishnu temple along with all his parikaras, and he says he calls the Vishnu as his tutelary deity, and from there he is issuing a royal decree. So therefore, he was definitely not anti-Vaishnava. And I think this inscription is very, very important to that effect. And we will have to, change Ramanuja's dates to come in tangent with Kulothunga the second's time period. So perhaps a few more years are left to celebrate 1000th year of Ramanuja. And this inscription, will be helpful in us to conclude that. Right, so that I think is very, very important. And you have other inscriptions. So the whole place is called Gangaikonda Chola Valanat, the Taluka, Panayur Nadu, which is the Jilla, and Brahmadeyam, the whole Brahmadeya villages, Tani Ur, Rajaraja Chaturvedi Mangalat, Brahmapurishara Mudaya Nayanar, Mahadevar, and there he says Deva Pratishtayum, Jala Pratishtayum Kandarudi. So along with the temple, there was also a big lake or something that was built. Then as I said, there is a later Pandya inscription that is there, and those are all normal, so I'm not getting into all of that. One last thing that I would like to say is about 1470, during the period of Salva Narasimha, Vijayanagaras. So there is a very interesting inscription which says there is this person called Aramvalartha Nayanar who belonged to a caste called Kaikolar. And I don't know about which social strata they belonged or anything like that, but I'm just telling from the inscription. Maybe we'll have to read a little more for that. So this Kaikolar caste person comes and to the royal representative who's there in the temple, and he is asking permission to use dind or pillows, and because his caste is not allowed to do that. And the person who is there gives permission and says, okay, you can use pillows from now on. And that I found very, very interesting. Like till 1470, there was this caste who was not allowed to use pillows, and they had to come and ask the royal representative whether they can use pillows or not. That was interesting.
Right.
So that's about Brahmadeyam, the Brahmadeyam in Arcot district.
Right. So I think this was a very, very fruitful and fun and very light kind of session also compared to our previous ones, I feel. Some ways.
The culture spiced it up.
Right. And but they're not spicy sculptures really this time.
Well, not literally, but yeah.
Not yeah. I mean, because some other places that I visited, like let's say Ahobilam is just filled with Tadipatri is filled with all kinds of obscene stuff. But I know exactly what you meant.
Yeah,
And
very beautiful, very
so
beautiful. Thank you, Revan.
thank you, Prateek. And I think no, it's just I got lucky with the temple. That's about it. But I mean, if you had gone it, you would have spoken over it for 3 days.
Oh no,
So, anyways, so I think looking forward to our next meeting, and I think we should make this more often. Like we should make this more frequent, and it should be much more informal, and where we speak about whatever has occupied us the last 2 weeks. That kind of thing.
we certainly will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right then. Cool.